right, come close. I want to tell you something magical today. This story comes all the way from Japan, a beautiful island country in East Asia, where mountains touch the clouds and cherry blossoms fall like pink snow. It's about kindness and secrets, and what happens when you break a promise. Now, close your eyes if you like, and let's walk through a snowy winter evening in old Japan. Once upon a time, in a tiny village nestled between rice fields and pine forests, there lived a young man named Yohei. He wasn't rich, not even close. He lived in a small wooden house with paper walls that rattled when the wind blew, and most days he had just enough rice for one meal. But Yohei had something more valuable than gold. He had a kind heart. One freezing winter evening, as snow fell thick and fast, Yohei was walking home from the market. His fingers were numb, his toes were frozen, and his stomach rumbled because he hadn't sold anything that day. Then he heard something. A soft cry, like someone in pain. He stopped and listened carefully. There it was again. Yohei hurried toward the sound, his feet crunching through the snow. And there, caught in a hunter's trap by the side of the road, was the most beautiful crane he'd ever seen. Her feathers were white as fresh snow, and her long neck was elegant as a dancer's. But her leg was caught in the cruel metal trap, and her dark eyes were filled with fear. "Oh, you poor thing," whispered Yohei. Without thinking twice, even though his hands were already freezing, he knelt down in the snow and carefully opened the trap. The crane fluttered free, shaking her wings. She looked at Yohei for a long moment with those intelligent dark eyes. Then she bowed her beautiful head, just once, and flew away into the snowy sky. "Be safe," Yohei called after her, smiling despite the cold. That night, Yohei went to bed hungry, shivering under his thin blanket. The wind howled outside like wolves singing to the moon. Then, just as he was drifting off to sleep, he heard a gentle knock at his door. Tap, tap, tap. Yohei sat up. Who would be out in this terrible weather? He opened the door, and standing there in the swirling snow was a young woman. She wore a simple kimono, and her hair was as black as a raven's wing. But what struck Yohei most were her eyes, kind and dark, and somehow familiar. "Please," she said softly, "I have nowhere to go. The snow is so deep. Might I stay here tonight?" Now, Yohei's house was tiny. He barely had enough food for himself. But remember, he had a kind heart. "Of course," he said, stepping aside. Come in. You'll freeze out there." The young woman came inside, and somehow, even though Yohei's house was small and cold, it felt warmer with her there. They shared his last bowl of rice. They talked by the firelight about simple things, the beauty of winter, the songs of birds, the taste of warm tea. When morning came, the woman said something unexpected. "You showed me great kindness. Please, let me stay and keep house for you. I don't eat much, and I can help." Yohei was lonely, if he was honest, and this woman had the gentlest smile. So she stayed. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. And you know what? Yohei had never been happier. The woman, whose name was Tsuru, was kind and clever and made him laugh. Eventually they married, in a simple ceremony under the cherry trees. But Yohei was still poor, very poor. One evening he sighed deeply, staring at their empty rice jar. Tsuru looked at him with those dark, knowing eyes. "I can help," she said quietly. "But you must promise me something very important." "Anything," said Yohei. "I'm going to weave cloth in the back room. Beautiful cloth that you can sell at the market. But you must never, not ever, look at me while I'm weaving. Do you promise?" It was an odd request, Yohei thought, but he trusted his wife. "I promise," he said. That night, Tsuru went into the back room and closed the door. Yohei heard the click-clack of the loom working through the night. In the morning she emerged looking pale and tired, but in her arms was the most beautiful cloth Yohei had ever seen. It shimmered like moonlight on water. It was softer than clouds. "Take this to market," she whispered. Yohei did, and a rich merchant bought it for more money than Yohei had ever seen in his life. They could buy rice, and vegetables, and warm blankets. But Tsuru looked thinner, more tired. A few weeks later, their money ran out again. "I'll weave one more cloth," Tsuru said quietly. "But remember your promise. Don't look." Again she went into the back room. Again Yohei heard the click-clack of the loom. But this time, Yohei's curiosity got the better of him. "Why can't I look?" he wondered. "What's she hiding?" He crept to the door. His hand touched the paper screen. And even though he'd promised, even though he knew he shouldn't, he peeked inside. And what he saw made his heart stop. There, at the loom, wasn't his wife. It was a crane. A beautiful white crane with a bleeding wing, pulling out her own feathers one by one and weaving them into the shimmering cloth. It was her, the crane he'd saved from the trap. She'd become human to repay his kindness, but the cloth was made from her own body, her own feathers, her own life. At that moment, Tsuru turned. Their eyes met. And in that instant, Yohei saw everything. Her love for him, her sadness, and her farewell. "I told you never to look," she said softly, her voice breaking. "Now, I must leave." "No!" cried Yohei. "Please! I'm sorry. I shouldn't have looked." But even as he spoke, Tsuru's form shimmered and changed. Feathers replaced skin. Wings replaced arms. And there stood the beautiful crane once more. She spread her wings, those magnificent white wings, and flew through the open door into the sky. Yohei ran outside calling her name, but she was gone, disappearing into the clouds like a dream. Yohei kept the last cloth she'd woven. He never sold it. Every evening he'd look at it and remember her kindness, her love, and the promise he'd broken. And sometimes, on winter evenings when the snow fell softly, he'd see a white crane flying overhead, and he'd wonder, was it her? You know what this story teaches us? Sometimes people, or magical beings, give us gifts out of pure love. And when someone asks us to trust them, to respect their boundaries, to keep a promise, that's a gift too. A gift we should treasure and protect. Because some secrets are kept not to hide things from us, but to protect something precious and magical. Have you ever kept a special promise for someone you care about? That's real magic, that is. Come back soon, explorers. The world is full of stories waiting to be told.